I'm Nick Hughes, and this is Founders Live Conversations.
All right. Hello, good morning, everybody, or afternoon, or even evening for at least one of us. Welcome to our conversation with, do you like to go by Maddie or Madison?
Yeah, Maddie is fine.
Maddie's great. Rifkin. And before we get going, I'm going to let Heidi Ham from Galvanize say a few words about Galvanize, and thanks for making things happen for us here for this Founders Live conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary and Founders Live for having us here today. Hi, Maddie. I'm looking forward to hearing about your journey as an entrepreneur. As Gary shared, my name is Heidi Ham, and I am the event coordinator and content manager with Galvanize on the San Francisco campus. For those of you who are new to the Galvanize community, we bring entrepreneurs, students, and companies together under one roof to create a one-of-a-kind tech ecosystem. We offer co-working spaces, immersive education in software engineering and data science, as well as enterprise training. Through curated and organic interactions, our members and students are immersed in a stimulating environment that fosters collaboration, innovation, and productivity. I also wanted to mention that we are currently offering a free week trial to all new members. So if you want more information, reach out to membership at Galvanize or our website. Otherwise, I will turn it back over to you, Gary and Maddie. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heidi, and thanks to Galvanize for all that they do for the startup community. It is really fantastic.
Absolutely.
So just as the title says, this is a conversation, so please feel free to jump in if this is your first time here, ask questions, and if you're too shy to do it live, go ahead and shoot it in the chat, and we'll take care of it there as well. And then, but just to start out, Maddie, why don't you just take a few moments to tell us about Mount and about your background and what the journey has been like for you as a startup entrepreneur and kind of where you're at.
Definitely, yes, I can do. Hi, everyone. So my name is Madi Rifkin. I'm the founder and CEO of Mount. And really at Mount, what we're doing is taking amenity management to the next level, meaning that we're bringing your old rental shack you might find on the beach online so that you as a guest of that hotel or resort or whatever it may be, the Airbnb, can actually see exactly what you can rent. You can do it through the app, you can pay for it, sign the terms and conditions sheet, and basically everything becomes very streamlined for both the guest and the property owner. So that's what we're doing. My background is in the micromobility space. I recently graduated college actually from Northeastern in Boston, and throughout my time there had been working with companies like Bird and Lime and Uber and Lyft, and really learning and seeing how they launched thousands of electric scooters around the world. Very popular model from a consumer standpoint. I don't think the cities would necessarily agree that they liked the chaos, but that's really kind of what we saw happen. And then the Mount team actually comes from that industry as well. I met them all there. And we saw the lack of asset management and thought scooters and bikes are really cool. Let's try and bring it to the hospitality space, but in a way where we can do pretty much anything with any amenities. So that's actually kind of how I got my start. That's how I met Galvanize too in Denver. We did a pilot together with scooters. And yeah, it's been a good journey so far. We've been live for about 6 months now in market and working in 7 different cities and really just automating amenities.
That's so great. So let me get this straight. I go rent a VRBO in Hawaii, and like they can actually, I'm admitting some people here, the owner can actually track their assets, their whatever, like literally their beach chair.
Yeah, exactly.
And know what's going on.
Yep, they can see who's renting it, where it's going, if it is brought back or not, in what condition it gets brought back in, and then also they can monetize it. So if they want to charge their guests, $5 a day or whatever it may be, you pay through it for the app. And then I guess the last thing we do is help curate the purchase of these amenities if you don't already have them. So you can get OEM prices, which otherwise you couldn't through us, and scooters and bikes. And then we give you the insurance policy too. So you as a host don't have to worry about going out and finding an insurance policy for all these rentals. We've curated that for you as well.
Wow, that's awesome. So how long have you been doing this? How long has Mount been around?
Mount has been around for about 2 years now, but we've made a lot of pivots along the way. I like to joke that we started as a bike lock company because that's really where my passion was. I built a bike lock when I was 12, and that's where this all started.
Wait, stop right there. What do you mean you built a bike lock when you were 12?
I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and the school I went to had like a mini Shark Tank style thing. I think really before Shark Tank even was a competition. And yeah, they had us like as little fifth graders prototyping in their lab with power tools. They were helping with that. And so I built this bike lock. It's like, why isn't a bike lock just part of your frame of your bike? It just seems so simple. So that's what I built. I got a patent for that when I was 15. And then, I studied entrepreneurship at Northeastern. So kind of brought all these things together, and that's how it all started. And then along the journey, we made a lot of pivots and then eventually ended in hospitality.
That's great. Are you like at 12, right? Like, so I grew up around an entrepreneurial family and business, right? Like, so I'm clear where I got that. Did you grow up in sort of a similar mindset, or was it just something that just showed itself for you?
No, I grew up in an entrepreneurial kind of environment as well. My grandfather moved to Denver to start a cable business. And so I saw him kind of go through that cycle. Well, I didn't see it firsthand. I've heard stories. Yeah. And then my dad, similar, and other grandpa as well. So definitely grew up with people around me doing that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it is funny how when we grow up around that environment, there kind of like tends to be a lean, if you will, towards that. I suppose for others, it's like, oh, that's the last thing I want. I don't want to do that, right? It's really great. Awesome. Well, that's so great. And like, can you tell us like where are you as a company goes? Like, I don't know a lot about Mount, so tell us a little bit about where are you in the funding stage? Where are you in the journey right at this moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So Mount is a seed stage company. So we have preliminary revenue. We're live in 7 cities. We have early traction, but we're not to that point where it's a massive repeatable process where you're like a Series A, B company and have like 100 employees. So we're right in the sweet spot. There's 8 of us on the team right now. And we are actually just in the middle of our fundraise. So we did it a bit kind of unorthodox, I guess you could say. And we opened up a portion of our raise on WeFunder, which is like this new crowdfunding platform where anyone can invest because they changed all the rules. The reason we did that actually was so our customers could be investors because they they love the journey, they love the product, and we're like, can I, benefit further? So that's what we're doing right now. That should close in about 3 weeks. And then we'll be off to the races. Our goal is to get live in 27 more cities in the next 12 months, get to 700 assets on our platform, and really we love working with Airbnb hosts. Actually, it's what we've been doing right now, but then starting to work with larger resorts and hotels and apartments too.
That's great. I want to dive into a little bit because I'm sure it hasn't all been sunshine and roses to this point. But before I go there, you touched on that you're in the middle of this and you're with WeFunder. I know that we had, as part of a talk not too long ago, Net Capital. We had somebody from Net Capital on, and like this, when I first started my startup, none of that was available, right? Like, and I'm not even sure it was when you started, when it first started. So like, tell us about like WeFunder, why you chose that and what's unique about that. And are you doing that in conjunction with going out and finding other investors, or do you already have other investors? And you don't have to use names here, but just give us kind of where you're at on that, because that is a big piece of what it is for founders, right? Like there's the idea, and then there's how the heck do we finance this?
Oh my gosh, no, I completely agree. And I think as a founder, if you've never done it before, financing is like the most foreign thing to anyone. And it's like something you can't really learn until you've heard other people's failures, and you can learn from that. And then, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way too, and I have learned from my own failures and mistakes. And that's why WeFunder, I thought to myself and team, was so unique, because it allows anyone in the world to really become an investor. You don't have to be someone who's making $200,000 a year, and you don't have to be someone who like actively invests as an angel investor. Like I had, like my grandma basically could be an investor. And so that's like what really spoke to us, because in the VC world, it has a very kind of cookie cutter process. You have to check these boxes. You know, it's very helpful if you're a male founder. And there's all these kind of barriers that were working against Mount, even though we were showing massive amounts of traction. And especially getting that first institutional check if you're a first-time founder is like the most hard thing to do. So that's why we actually wanted to go the WeFunder route. I had followed WeFunder as a company previous to launching on their platform. I actually almost worked for them as an internship during my college career. So I knew them really well when they were like an 8-person company working out of like a house in San Francisco. It was really funny. And then the rules changed and they onboarded startups and they're like, let's start raising money. And I thought, you know, let's give it a shot. I have a lot of people in the network who I think would want to be investors, and WeFunder really gave us the first start in our round. So the round size is $1 million. We're doing like 10% of that on WeFunder, but WeFunder allowed us to go then to larger investment firms, to larger angels and be like, look, our customers already invested. We have that in the bank at this point. Come in on the round. So now we have about 50% of the round circled up, ready to be closed very soon. And then we're actually in the process of just bringing on one more kind of larger investor who will take off the other 50% of that raise.
Great. Now, so what you said there, you said something there that I hadn't considered before, which is that there's almost like a proof of concept or something, right? Like, hey, look at all of our customers are investing in us already. This isn't just like a Kickstarter with friends and family. This is like, hey, these are people actually investing in us, which is distinct, right? A Kickstarter, you don't get any any shares, you're not getting any investment into the company, but here that's the distinction, right? Mm-hmm. How, like, has that been really valuable? Like, do investors go, oh, okay, if other people without the means to invest big money are investing, then that makes a difference for them?
Yeah, I definitely think it showed a further definition of product market fit, because our customers were valuing the product so much and seeing their own return on investment. Then they're like, I want to get in on this on the ground level and not just be one of their first customers, but be one of their first investors. So you kind of win from both angles. So I think, yeah, as an investor, if I heard that the customers were also investors, that would kind of give us a leg up. And we definitely felt that when we started the raise with larger institutions.
Yeah. Do you think it's prohibitive on WeFunder or platforms like that to try and raise the entire amount?
So this is where it gets interesting. Yeah. And I actually just learned this, and I didn't know this was the case. Like, I just assumed WeFunder would take anyone's check that was $100 to $1,000, and that was kind of your average check size. But they also allow you to basically set the terms of your round. And when you do that, if you have institutional investors or larger checks like an angel, you can actually have them come in on the platform, and then WeFunder will take their name out so they can still have a line on your cap table as a like angel investor, but it's basically just all consolidating it into one place. So theoretically, if I was working with a VC and I was like, look, we're doing this WeFunder raise, that's where we're funneling all the investment. You can come in on the round, but you have to put it through WeFunder. That would be fine. And then WeFunder, I think if it's a check larger than 50,000, maybe it's 20,000, they will not take a percentage of it because they want to incentivize you to get those larger angels.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. So it's like a one-stop shop, so everybody can kind of come there and get that.
Yeah, like WeFunder just proved it out. They just raised, I think, $5 million for themselves on their own platform.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like I said, I know a little bit about some of these. WeFunder I'm not as familiar with, but is there certain like metrics that you have to hit or anything to be a part of WeFunder, or is it, you don't have to have an actual app in place, or like what's the level of terms of engagement with them?
So I heard their sweet spot is around where we are, like seed stage to Series A type of companies. You do have to go through some like government stuff where you have to file, like you work with an accountant and they file this thing called a Form C. So you can't just go on and make a fake business, like they're going to validate it for you.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of one step, but it's not like a different crowdfunding platform where you need to have like 10,000 in or monthly revenue, like milestones like that. They're pretty open to working with different startups.
Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Feel free to throw out any questions, anybody, or throw it in the chat. Happy to hear from you. Well, tell us a little bit about your current customers and how they're finding you and that whole bit.
Yeah, so Mount started with the Airbnb hosts because Airbnb is like a great community, and you have communities from the traveler side, where you can all meet up with each other. But on the host side, there's communities based like by region. So if you're a Denver Airbnb host, you actually know probably everyone that's a host as well. There's meetups, you get to learn from each other. And so we liked that aspect of it. And then also we felt like, because we started with scooters and bikes as the amenities, that most young travelers were going to Airbnbs, and typically you probably won't have a car, and it's probably not, maybe it's like a 15-minute walk to get to like the bar or the city center. So it's like perfect place for scooters and bikes, but Airbnb hosts don't have like the capability to do it themselves because they don't have the management tools. They don't operate like a hotel. So it just kind of seemed like a natural fit. So we actually got on Facebook and messaged the Airbnb hosts, because they actually are all on Facebook in like various groups. There's, hundreds of thousands of them on there. And we posted as like a fact finding mission, just wanting to do market research. We're like, hey, if we offered this, would you use it? And we ended up signing up 120 properties in like 2 weeks from a single post that wasn't even meant to be a sales post. So that was crazy for us. And then we're like, oh, I think we're onto something, especially in this Airbnb market. It's so up and coming and like very thriving post-COVID. And I think we're going to see that kind of do really well. So our first customers are actually super hosts. So someone who owns or operates 5 to 20 to 50 Airbnb properties in a region. And we will basically help streamline their amenities. So we'll, take their bikes or scooters if they have them. If they don't, we'll bring them on the platform, and they're off to the races. And they really like it so far because they can make extra revenue. So anywhere from like $100 to $500 a scooter, basically, you could make per month. They're pretty.
How easy is it for that person to set up? Like if they're a non-techie, how
Mhm.
easy is it for them to set up that product?
So easy. It basically, if you're buying new from us, they come already assembled and set up. You just basically unbox them like it's Christmas. And then we will do everything else on the back end. So Mount will take care of the customer service. We will set them up, and all you have to do is download the app and you can start actually riding them yourselves. It takes maybe 5 minutes. So that's really easy. If you already have the assets, you actually just buy an IoT device from us, and then you would go and put that on your bike, and it would turn it into kind of a share system that works on our fleet. So that one would just require you to be able to place an IoT device, but it's nothing too challenging.
That's so great. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I want to get into Airbnb just so I can start using your product already.
No, I know it's something a lot of people are actually jumping into like in the last year, because I think you get hooked when you buy one property and you realize you can make like $50,000 extra a year in profit. And then you're like, oh, I need another. And it just snowballs.
That's great. You'll have to excuse my 7-month-old puppy in the background there doing some barking. Anyway.
So cute. Oh my gosh, puppies are always welcome.
Yeah, they are. He's amazing. All right, so now we've gotten on like all the good stuff, right? Just like, here's the funding, here's the stuff, here's where we're at, and here's how awesome your product is, which it does sound really great, and you've really solved a problem, which is always awesome. Now give us some dirt, give us some juicy stuff. What's been the biggest 1 or 2 struggles in the last 2 years as you've started, as it's gotten going? Like, has there been any co-founder conflicts? Do you have co-founders? Like, what has it been like?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a first-time founder, and I was doing this throughout college, and so obviously I was very naive and learning as I went. And as you've seen, we've made a lot of pivots. I'll take you back to a story pre-Mount. But that's where I got my entrepreneurial start. I was working on another bike lock company. And I was at this event basically where it was like 10 startups tabling. People would come up and ask you questions. And at the time, it was just me and my friend working on it, but he happened to be male. And like, this was my child, like bike lock thing. So I was like the lead of that kind of venture. But it was just so eye-opening because I had a person come up. They were asking us questions. They took my business card actually at the end of it and walked away. And as they're reading the business card and walking away, they're like, oh, she's the CEO and founder. And everyone was like not assuming that was my role. They were like, oh, she must be an assistant or something, or like a model, So I think that's kind of really when I got eye-opened into just the entrepreneurship world. I mean, I had heard before that it's very male centric, and I didn't want to believe it. And then when I felt that firsthand, I was like, I kind of see where it's coming. And there's been a lot of change over the last 4 years since I've been in kind of entrepreneurship world and know how to handle that now. But that was kind of an interesting one for me where I was like, okay, I get what people are talking about now.
I bet. Holy smokes. Yeah, it is. There's a lot of great like awareness being created out there now, and it's really wonderful. And I know like Nick and Founders Live really is at the forefront of that and making sure that's out there. And anybody that listens to like the Reboot podcast with Jerry Colonna, he's such a trailblazer in that too, and just making sure that there's some real equity in our entrepreneurship. And it's really it's great that that's starting to be a forefront conversation and less of a brushed aside conversation that it was for years.
Exactly.
Really great. Thanks for sharing that. Now,
I completely agreed with that. And there's a ton of resources out there now for female founders and funds that are specifically willing to look at female founders, and because it is just a different journey than if you're a male, but definitely changing in a good way. I'd say the other kind of second thing that really took Mount from a bike lock company into what it is today was the team. And I had started out as a solo founder and was kind of going at this at myself. I had a few friends from college who would help here and there with engineering things because that's not in my background. But it was hard to get over the hurdle from a school project to an actual company. And it wasn't until I actually took the initiative to start meeting people on LinkedIn. And I was like, hey, I'm a student. Can we talk for 10 minutes? People in the industry of micromobility. Just kind of wanting to meet people, really starting my networking kind of early, I guess. And that's really what took Mount to the next level was that. And I think that's a hard hurdle to get over for people who aren't comfortable with networking or just randomly talking to people, which definitely was not my forte in the beginning. But I mean, I had a few moments where I would like show up at people's offices and just be like, hey, like I want to learn. I have 10 minutes of your time? That's actually how I met one of Mount's co-founders. So Mount has 3 co-founders, myself, Rashab, and Matt. Matt was working at Jump. He was running the warehouse or a head mechanic at Jump in Denver, which happened to be kind of where I was raised. And so I got wind of that. We had connected on LinkedIn, and then I showed up and I was like, Matt, I'm here with the lock. What do you think? And kind of won him over. And then during COVID, there was, transition periods within micromobility, and he came onto the team. So that was one that was super interesting to me, but definitely had to get out of the comfort zone for that.
Wow. Yeah. And now that you're in the CEO spot, right, really taking that seat, and I can really hear that you are, how's it been that getting comfortable with being uncomfortable in that networking and getting into the conversations? And because a lot of times we go, when we're entering a new area like that, or like, oh my God, I'm talking to some important person or an investor or blah, blah, blah. Like, how's that been for you?
Definitely a learning experience. I had to push myself out of my comfort zone, but when I guess actually this is interesting. I would say COVID was a blessing in disguise for networking for myself, because everyone then became available on Zoom, and I no longer had to go fly to California to talk to those people. So I had like at one point, like I think it was March or April, right at the beginning when lockdown happened, I had like 10 meetings a day on Zoom, which is people I had met on LinkedIn. And I'm like, look, I'm a student. I tried to leverage that as much as possible and talk to everyone. And over the course of like that month, when I probably met with 200 people in the micromobility industry, that's kind of what got me over that hurdle of being uncomfortable, and something clicked. And now I can do that to kind of anyone.
Well, you are really great, and you're really easy to like be with. And I can't imagine anybody having a difficult conversation with you. And one of the things just for everyone too is it's really funny how we can get like stopped and stuck and nervous and all that stuff, and then you get talking to somebody like, oh, they're just a regular human too, right? And they're just doing their thing. So it is really great. That is awesome. All right, well, what other challenges have you experienced, or is there any challenges you're up against right now outside of funding?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest one is just kind of managing a team while fundraising, while trying to do sales, and then also growth. That's something, we're definitely learning on our feet as a team. We're a pretty cohesive unit, but we're actually all very remote. Like we have workers in Poland, New Zealand, Denver, the West and East Coast. So we're operating on like pretty much every time zone.
How big is your team?
There's 8 of us at the moment. And then we have advisors as well. But yeah, that's been very interesting. We got very good at it because of COVID. Zoom was very helpful, but it is hard to keep people motivated at like 2 a.m. when you have a meeting and you're like, sorry, we just have to get everyone on the phone and this is the time it happens. So I'd say that's been interesting for us, but people have really stepped up on the Mount team. People are coming into their own with their roles, and Shinari is one to highlight. He's our director of operations. He actually got up and running 3 new Airbnb Superhost in the last month. So he's just crushing it. And yeah, I met him in person actually yesterday for the first time. So that was
Oh,
crazy.
really?
Yeah,
How long has he been a part of the team?
He's been with us for about 6 months now, but because of COVID, none of us could travel. So now I'm out and about. I actually am in New York right now with meeting some people, but that was a surreal moment. It was very funny for us.
Hey, Stephen, would you mind saying a little bit more about that? He just put something in the chat for us here.
Oh, cool.
Sorry, Gary, I wasn't sure if it was appropriate, so I checked with you first.
That's anytime that we can like share ideas and thoughts, I think it'd be great.
Let me switch on my video. It's more. Hi, Madison. Pleased to meet you online.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well.
Yeah, so I think possibly not, let me put it in the chat for everyone, possibly a bit early on that, but I really like your concept. I think there's some real benefit in it, especially the lock part interests us here in Africa, where unfortunately crime is a reality. But something you might not be aware of is, and I've traveled to Kigali in Rwanda a few times, the taxis are motorcycles. There's about 30,000 just in that one city.
Wow.
Yep. So people get transported around on the back of motorcycles. The link I posted there is a local startup, and Rwanda is actually an interesting story. After the genocide 20-odd years ago, 25 years ago, they've kind of been reinventing the country. So it's been fascinating for me to travel there and see kind of what they do. But one of the things I see the president's now doing is he's trying to force all 30,000 to go electric motorcycles versus petrol. But I mean, there are 30,000 of these bikes riding around. I don't know what security they have. I don't know what devices they have in them to track their routes and find them if they get lost, or doing some data mining around that. So it could be an interesting blue sky thought at some point when you're ready, is to say, how would your device or a pivot of your device inside such a motorcycle potentially add significant value to that whole ecosystem? So I just thought that was a thought I had while I was listening to you.
Definitely. No, I think that's a great idea. And that's why I love talking to people, just because they come up with such unique use cases for this device we've created. And I think that'd be brilliant. And it would be interesting. That's kind of the thing we're leading into, is the data aspect. So being able to see kind of where people are going, what roads are the most crowded. And that probably would actually be very beneficial to a company like this, being able to track that. And no, a great idea. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, so and what is it? Which is also a great way to look at, like, obviously that would be an interesting way to scale, right? Mm-hmm. Like what you're doing. What do you see for the future as far as scaling goes for your business?
So I think Mount was built in a way where we did start with electric scooters and bikes, but because amenities really span across anything, and as we talk to more people, they're like, oh, can I use the platform in this way? We actually built the platform / IoT device to be industry and vehicle or asset agnostic. So really you could stick this device on anything that moves or not, and be able to track it, get data analytics, have people rent it. So we had a hotel actually the other day ask us if they could put the device on their maid carts and construction equipment, because they were a 14,000 acre resort and just had no idea what was going on. So kind of like a microcosm of like Rwanda, where it's like what's happening in the land we own with everything moving. And we can actually just show them a map and be like, hey, we have a vehicle here, you have a cart here, you have a construction piece here, and here's how they're moving. And you don't need the rental aspect anymore, but the data tracking piece and the management starts to come into play. So that's where we're going. I mean, anyone who wants to use this system in any way really can, and we're just kind of here to let you do that. So I think motorcycles in Rwanda wouldn't be too far off. And working with a startup like actually the one Stephen put in the chat would be very cool. We love partnerships like that. So I'll have to do some more digging.
Yeah, that's really great. Boy, the thought of running a huge resort and being able to actually put that on the, you know, like it really becomes almost like analytical from a standpoint of like, they can track efficiency, they can start tracking like where are they at, or they, you know, without having to do this reporting. Yep, this room's done. Like they can go, oh, they've already completed that. Like, that's really great.
Exactly. And they were like, yeah, and if we know that, we can actually like direct guests in a different location because we know, you know, construction is happening there, as opposed to like the pen and paper they probably use now and the walkie-talkies.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anybody else have some comments, questions? Feel free to chime in. I've got a question. So you mentioned a couple of things that like you probably didn't have this background of like, oh, I'm used to managing a team of people, right? So what kind of growing pains have you had there, and what's that been like?
A lot of growing pains for sure. I mean, yeah, I'm very young. I'm 23. So managing a team is definitely new to me. But I think because Mount has such a solid foundation with our 3 co-founders, including myself, and then our like very immediate hires that like, I don't know what you call them, but you know, they're not, yeah, just the team basically.
Initial leadership team, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. The Mount team is such a strong foundation that like, even if I mess up, which actually happens quite a lot, they're like, Maddie, we got you. Here's like what we think would be due. So it's very collaborative, and like we like to own up to our mistakes and be very transparent because that's how we grow. And so, you know, if I made a mistake, I'm like, sorry guys, that was the complete wrong call. Like next time, let's all chat through this one and then talk and see kind of what works best. So that's the approach we've taken with our team of 8. And I think it's working so far. It's creating this culture, this strong foundation for us to really grow and be able to have this repeatable process for people to come in, learn, grow in Mount, and contribute to kind of everyone learning.
That warms my heart as a business coach and consultant. All I want to hear is that there's communication going on, and really that vulnerability, like, oh yeah, I screwed that one up and let's do it differently next time. That's really fantastic. So keep doing that. Right? Like whenever, because as you grow, it's going to be like overwhelming at times. And you might feel a little like, as soon as you start talking to yourself instead of other people, that's the time to go start talking to other people.
Exactly. Yeah, I think hopefully it'll be a tradition in Mount when we get bigger, where we can just stand up and be like, I am so sorry, I messed up on this one, guys, but it'll get better.
Yeah, that's really great. Well, so I have a little bit of a curveball with you here, because I'm not quite sure if how much of this you've done or not, but I have I'm leading a talk around negotiating next week, and I wanted to just pick your brain, like, how's that been? Because that's not something you've probably experienced a lot, but I'm imagining you've now been in a few negotiations, whether it's been for financing or even getting your product put together and those types of things. Anything that you've learned or that was challenging or that was interesting around that?
Yeah, I have a lot of learnings about this because money is something that you need to take pretty seriously as a young startup, because you don't have a lot of it. So you can't just throw $5,000 at a person who's going to build you something and hope it works. So I'd say in negotiation, we've had negotiations with customers, with pricing, because trying to figure out the best pricing model. Are you leaving money on the table? Are you not? You know, what is their pricing threshold? That's a big one for us, and has been relatively easy because the Airbnb host community is just very kind of open and communicative, and they're not, you know, snakes trying to just make an extra dollar. So in that sense, it's been good, but there have been a few kind of learnings, especially when Mount was really young and trying to really do product development, which is hard to do in-house as a startup because you do not have like the money to pay top engineering talent to join your team. So you're either relying on your skills trying to learn them, or you work with like a product development firm. And there are a lot of product development firms out there that say they help you as a startup. But me being someone who'd never worked with one before, I didn't quite know what that was supposed to look like. And, in some aspects, we didn't get taken advantage of, but I wish I had been more clear in what we wanted because it didn't come out correct. And then they're like, but this is what you asked for. And I didn't know you needed to be like very, very specific. And now I know. So learnings like that, which I guess go along with negotiation because I just didn't know how clear you need to be. And then I guess you have the whole negotiation side in the financing as well. When you talk to banks, when you need loans, when you're talking to angels and investors, and everyone has a very different mindset, but I think that's the most cutthroat part of negotiation is you really have to come in prepared, being very kind of not casual, I guess, like I am right now. Yeah, and just take it, very seriously because they're on the other end. This is a business for them and they're not going to give you an extra $100 just because they're trying to get the lowest valuation and they want to make money too. So
yeah, it's really great. That's it's there's negotiations or they're conversations, right? And we all experience in our daily lives like a negotiation, like some of us might have that with our partner at home, right? Yeah. And it turns out as a win-win. And sometimes and that feels more like a conversation. And then there's negotiations that can sometimes feel like a winner and a loser, right? And so if you had to throw a percentage in there, how many of them are kind of like win-win and conversations, and how much has it been like, oh man, this is a really like cutthroat, this is a win-loss situation?
I'd say most of them are definitely win-win, and I look at them as learning opportunities because as a young startup, there's a lot you don't know. And for example, pricing is one of them. And so we've gone through a few different business models. And even if, we didn't win in the beginning, it still comes out as a win because we learned, maybe that's not going to work. So I look at it that way. Even if you go into a cutthroat negotiation with like a large VC firm, it's probably going to be a win-win because one, you learned how to do that so you can be better at that for the next time. But two, you don't ultimately have to take the deal, even if you get to the negotiation. Like we've done that before where we passed because, we just didn't feel comfortable with where we got to. And that's fine because, there's a lot of money out there. You don't have to say yes to the first check. You make sure it's a good culture fit, all of that type of stuff. So even though you feel like you might not have power, which is how I felt, like you have to remember that like ultimately you have the power to say no or yes.
Yeah, that's really great. I don't know how much preparation you did before going into any types of these negotiations, but it's one of the things that I talk about too, is like ahead of time, really establish, hey, what's your target outcome? And also what's your walkaway outcome? Like, yeah, if it gets below this point, this is a walkaway outcome, right? And like, have you done much of that, or is that something you're going to start doing in the future?
Exactly. No, I always go in kind of definitely a lot of prep. Where do I want to be? What's that going to look like? All that good stuff.
That's great. That's great. Lewis, I think you've got a question around marketing.
Yes. Hi.
Hi,
Maddie. It's Luis, actually.
Sorry.
But yes, thanks for the conversation. It's been really good. My marketing question is, so your B2B sales, essentially, like how does, and I come from a marketing background, creative agency background, so that's always where I lead with these things. I'm wondering, like, how do you do creative work? What's the function of creative executions and marketing for your company? Like, do you do that, or are you just mostly like phone, personal networking to get leads, or how do you see that creative work fitting into your organization, or like even just things that maybe aren't like traditional ads or even social media, but stuff like I don't know, anything fun, like partnerships, things like that. Yeah.
No, so we actually look at marketing as a great opportunity for us because we are B2B sales, but what we realized is that because all of the amenities are like direct to the consumer, we still have that aspect. And that was something we were struggling with until I owe all of this credit to our director of marketing, Mallory, who came on and was like, guys, what are you doing? You need some creative aspects here. And she basically took Mount from where it was and gave us this whole identity where, you know, we want you to hop on the amenity to have fun, to go explore and get that local kind of flavor of where you're staying, because that's a big part of Airbnb. And then also we realized that we had to supply the host or property with marketing materials, because if the guest saw a scooter, but it didn't have any branding on it, because that's how we started, they were just going to assume that it was the Airbnb host personal scooter and they weren't going to use it. And so we had to like bridge that barrier, I guess, to educating the end user. And that's really where we use our marketing. So on our Instagram platform, where a lot of Airbnb hosts are, we like to have fun with it. We'll show various scooters and people we're working with so we can promote the Airbnb property as well. Same on Facebook. And then I think the biggest one for us is these community partnerships. So we actually have a partnership with a company out in Miami. They're called Vibes B&B. So it's like a Airbnb, yep, but it's for cannabis. Like they want to have an experience when you go and not get in trouble. So we really like working with them. They have a huge kind of reach, a lot of hosts on the platform, and a lot of amenities that we can really have fun with. So things like that also are amazing to do creative wise.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. That's really good to hear. Before I go, any other possible mobility things besides scooters? Like, I'm sure Segway had its time. That's kind of goofy. Anything else on your horizon for things, or is scooters kind of the way?
No, so we actually are kind of trending away from scooters because they're everywhere at this point, and we want to have that novel approach. The thing we think is going to be very cool, there's this company called Fat Scooters. It's PHAT out of Arizona, and they have like, I call it like a hybrid between a moped, a bike, and a scooter. And it's an electric device, but it's like the coolest thing. And if I were at an Airbnb, I would 100% be getting on it. So just adding on cool vehicles like that, because as I said, we're not constrained. Like if you're an Airbnb host and you want like something you found, sure, we'll put it on our platform. So, I mean, mopeds, I think would be super cool. Like the classic Vespa is kind of actually what our colors are based off of, is that pastel palette. You know, getting somewhere where it's Instagrammable, you're going to have fun, you're going to go explore. That's kind of what we like to do at Mount. And, you know, we travel a lot anyways, so we're tying everything together.
Well, that's a really cool angle to sell people on, to sell hosts on, right? Like you're not just trying to get them to buy your thing because it makes sense for them. You get them to envision a whole new like thing that their customers are gonna dream about and like, you know, envision for themselves as part of their whole experience, and you're just helping them unlock something new and exciting. It's really cool. Yeah, last thing that I want to ask, I'm taking 3 questions here, Gary.
Go for it.
Last thing I want to ask, what's up with the name? I came into a little bit late to the conversation, so you might have explained, but Mount Lock seems like an odd name. What's the story there?
Yes, no, it is a very odd name. It's actually, we've dropped the locks, but it has not cut on yet. But we started out as Mount Locks because we started out as a lock company. But really Mount is the name I wanted from the beginning. It's the one kind of we stuck with. And I guess it has 2 meanings, because really originally this device can mount onto anything. So like that's kind of where the name came from. But I mean, it's not really that deep. Like I came from Colorado. I love the mountains. I basically just took half of the word mountain. And our old logo used to look like a mountain.
Yeah.
But it's short and sweet. You know, I think it works for now, and we'll see.
Okay. Well, good luck. Thanks for answering.
Yeah, of course. It was good meeting you.
That's great. Thank you, Luis. Anybody else have any questions, comments they want to throw in? Or Maddie, is there anything that we haven't hit today that you think would be great to share about the journey?
Great question. I mean, I can talk more about what we were just talking about, which is really not just only tracking and launching amenities and doing all that, but there is an experience side to Mount, which is like if you have a scooter, you could go on a scooter tour. The host can actually put in recommendations with where they want you to go. And then you can go on a foodie tour. You can go see the local historical sites, and you don't have to do the research. The scooter will take you there. So there's so many.
Wait a minute, say that again. Like I can show up to that VRBO or Airbnb in Hawaii, jump on a scooter, and it's going to actually already have a like, hey, you want to go check out these food spots, and it'll take me there.
Yeah, in the app. So when you're looking
Right.
at the app, it'll be like, do you want to go on a scooter tour? And it'll be like, here's what the host recommends, because they're mostly time locals. So then you can be like, yeah, and you can click the spots you want to go. It'll populate a route for you on safe terrain, and you can just go bop around. And that's kind of what we like to do at Mount, is really bring the local small businesses, into kind of what Airbnb has already created, and just create a extension of that. But that way you don't have to bother the host and feel awkward about it when you're like, hey, can you give me like all your recommendations of everywhere you'd love to go?
Yeah, that actually makes me think of a question I've got for you. So in our business, and my consulting partner Sven is with us here too, is we have experiences with our clients that when they're developing their app, they've done it overseas, or they've done it, whatever. Did you have any challenges or experiences that you can share with people that are looking at when they're developing their app, like, hey, don't do this worked or that didn't?
Yeah, I actually owe a lot of this credit to our advisor, JC Garrett, who like works at Dashfire, which he's basically done software for like the last 20 years with startups. And so we've had a lot of conversations on like where you should start. And his advice was not to start from scratch and really try to develop a system, because in a startup, you make so many pivots that if you spent 6 months developing this platform and then try and sell it to a customer for one day and realize I built the exact wrong thing, like you're going to be starting over from scratch, and your process and the progress is just not going to get anywhere. So his advice was actually to start with like a white label app, where you can basically pay a very small fee to get some type of proof of concept and really try and test it in the market. So that's actually what we did originally back in September, is we worked with a company called Lattice, and they got us up and running with 4 scooters in like a day. And we're like, thank you. We just really wanted to see if Airbnb hosts like scooters. We didn't need to build the platform just yet because we didn't know what features they wanted. And this is a micromobility platform. So they're used to launching with cities, and we just randomly heard of them. They launch with colleges, but we kind of made it work for our needs. And then over the next, few months, we're able to learn exactly kind of what features the host wanted, what they didn't want, what was working with Lattice, what wasn't. And now we have a very defined product roadmap because of that. And it's actually like we thought originally, before we even used Lattice, the Airbnb host was going to need these features. And then it turned out we were all wrong. So if we had gone and designed a platform, we would have been, pushed back another 8 months from our actual product launch if that were the case. So I think that was really good advice on JC's part. And I don't know if a lot of people know to do that either. That's kind of a newer thing.
Yeah, that's really great. I hadn't considered that before either. That's a really great way to go about it, because then you can really test what do my users want actually, not and while I've got this idea that solves a problem, my vision on how it solves the problem may not align necessarily with what that end user thinks, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah, well, and then on top of that, going out and finding developers, like, if you're going to custom develop an app, it'll probably be $100,000-$200,000. And if it's completely wrong, like, what was the point of that?
And if you do it less expensive, and then you've got to fix it down the road too, and then that becomes cumbersome. Interactions are not great with your app users, all those types of things. So it is a tough road. So you have an app now.
Yep, the Mount app. It actually will be coming out in stores very soon. We're just kind of waiting for a few last features to actually have that go.
Got it.
Extra
and
live.
Did you end up developing that in-house, or finding a company that you liked? And
we actually ended up really liking Lattice, and they had a whole massive team of developers. So they helped us create the Mount app. So it worked out really well for us. We found this like micromobility company that had a ton of developers, so we didn't have to go find them ourselves. And we worked
great, and they have a ton of expertise in that area with you already.
Yeah, exactly. And then we've just kind of, with Rashab, who's our CTO, customized it to exactly what we need, because we're not micromobility fleets, we're more asset management. So it is slightly different, but that way we can still have that really great relationship.
Gosh, that is fantastic. That is good. That is a great approach, and that's something I can help our clients with. So that's really great.
Definitely saved us a lot of money in the long run and allowed us to go so much faster than if we had done it ourselves.
And certainly the money's important, but the amount of headaches that founders have to go through when they're developing an app and it's not what their users wanted and have to go back and forth that way can be a pretty painful process emotionally too.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, some people get too attached too, it's like your little baby. And then if it doesn't work, you're like, I don't want to let it go.
Exactly. Well, this has been really great, Madison. Is there anything you want to say in closing? Is there anybody else that wants to jump in with a question before we head out? Great. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, super insightful. I know I've gotten a lot out of it for myself and what I'm going to be doing in the future. So really appreciate it. And just, thank you for being authentic and vulnerable and like really sharing what some of the struggle has been like, and also giving some really, really great insight and advice as far as what's going to be available for other founders down the road. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. No, likewise, thank you for having me on. This was so much fun and it was great meeting you and everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. See you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye.